Running backs are the focal point of every fantasy football team, so it becomes very important to identify players going outside the top 12 at the position who could have monstrous years and finish inside the top 12. And depending on that player's ADP or even their production, they could range anywhere from just being really good picks to legitimate league winners. So today, I have 6 running backs going in rounds 4 or later that if the season goes the right way for them, they have absolutely legendary upside as top 10 fantasy running backs this year. So let's kick things off with one of my favorite values in all of fantasy right now. It is Panthers running back Chuba Hubbard. Now last year, Chuba played in 15 games, put up almost 1,200 rushing yards on 250 carries at 4.8 yards per carry, and scored 10 times. That is more rushing yards and more touchdowns than Bucky Irving last year in 2 fewer games. He also caught 43 passes for 170 yards and a touchdown, so he was active in the passing game even though he wasn't really all that great at it. And those are his entire season numbers, but he really didn't take over as the starter until week 4, playing under 60% of snaps each week in weeks 1 through 3, but then never playing below 65% of snaps from week 4 on, really averaging more like 80% of snaps every single week. So from weeks 4 through 16, Hubbard was on a 17-game pace of over 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns on 300 carries, plus his 48 dump-off passes for another 150 yards and a touchdown. So we're looking at a dude who last year was producing more like 1,500 yard and 15 touchdown guy on 350 total touches in one of the worst offenses in the league last year. For reference, that isn't much different than what Kyren Williams, Jonathan Taylor, and Josh Jacobs all did last year, who were all top 10 fantasy running backs. I don't care that they added Rico Dowdle. He is strictly a backup running back. I don't care that they drafted Trevor Etienne. He is the backup to their backup running back. Chuba signed a 4-year extension last year and has shown this coaching staff the ability to command a large workload, be very successful with that workload, and stay around 90% healthy while doing so. He did strain his calf, missed the last 2 weeks of last year, but that's not something that I'm concerned about with Chuba Hubbard. The Panthers drafting Ted McMillan is also probably a good thing for Chuba because it'll cause defenses to have to account for a legitimate wide receiver threat on the outside, and if it makes the offense better, helps to sustain drives, get into the red zone, help score touchdowns, that's only a good thing for Chuba Hubbard. Right now, he is a late 4th round pick in ADP in 12-team leagues, sometimes even falling into the 5th round, and I'm smashing that draft button every single time. He is part of the reason why my favorite place to draft is earlier in the 1st round, so I can grab an elite wide receiver, hopefully another stud wide receiver in the 2nd, then go running back in the 3rd, and Chuba Hubbard in the 4th. That's about as ideal of a draft scenario for me as possible this year, and Chuba is a big reason why. But we can't talk about what-if scenarios and possible legendary upside without talking about Seahawks running back Kenneth Walker. I don't think people really realize this, but on a per-game basis last year, Kenneth Walker was the RB12 with 16.5 PPR points per game. That is sandwiched directly between Chuba Hubbard and James Cook and only a half a point per game behind Kyren Williams. He was excellent last year. He just has one major defect, which is, of course, injuries. But to Kenneth Walker's credit, prior to last season, he had played 15 games in 2022 and 2023, which is pretty much all we can ask for most running backs in the NFL today. They're all going to get banged up and miss a game or two here or there throughout the year. So if Kenneth Walker can stay healthy, play 15 or more games again in 2025, he is in for potentially the biggest season of his career. We all know the Clint Kubiak system is fantastic for running backs, most recently with Alvin Kamara last year, who set a career high in rushing yards and had the most rushing touchdowns, most receiving yards, and the highest yards per carry in a single season since 2020. Translate that over to Kenneth Walker, who is a tackle-breaking machine, a big yards after contact guy because he kind of needs to be because of how bad his offensive line is. He has a nose for the end zone, has improved his receiving workload over the last 3 years. If Clint Kubiak can work his magic in Seattle with a slightly improved offensive line, Walker could be magnificent. We kind of saw it on Thursday night in the Seahawks' first preseason game. George Halani rushed for 60 yards and a touchdown on 7 carries and looked phenomenal. Even the Seahawks Twitter account jokingly said that Helani is the best running back out of Boise State based on Ashton Genty's performance in the same game. I know it's week 1 of the preseason. We can't really take away anything from that, but it's obvious that Seattle wants to run the ball, and the Kubiak system knows how to run the ball effectively. And if it's a healthy Kenneth Walker seeing 250 plus touches this year with a healthy dose of receiving upside, his potential is massive as a 4th round pick in drafts, as your RB2 or maybe even your RB3 to start your team. This video is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy season is in full swing, and we here at 4 for 4 are all over it. We've got drafts firing up, leagues are reuniting, and yes, some early group chat smack talk has already started. This year on 4 for 4, we are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league, I've always been a fan of how intuitive the Yahoo platform is. From draft day to waiver claims, it just works the way you want it to. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's just one team standing. With the season right around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you are more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing on Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/tmap. That's yahoofantasy.com/TMAP. Now, the next running back with legendary upside is new Patriots rookie running back TreVeyon Henderson, who, if you watched at all at Ohio State over the last few years, you know this kid is just dripping with talent and potential. He was phenomenal as a freshman in 2021, rushing for over 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns as the immediate RB1 for Ohio State at 18 years old. Then he was plagued by some injuries in 2022 and 2023, but was still productive when he played those years. And then 2024, sharing the backfield with Quinshon Judkins, Henderson rushed for over 1,000 yards at 7.1 yards per carry and caught 27 passes for 284 yards and a touchdown through the air for over 10 yards per reception. He's 5'10", 202 pounds, runs a 4.4 40, and has excellent burst and acceleration to end drives on any given play. And now that he's in New England, he has an opportunity to be, at worst, a really good RB1B to Ramondre Stevenson and more of a receiver out of the backfield. But at best, he can absolutely take over this backfield as the main RB1, a la Aaron Jones in Green Bay or Austin Eckler with the LA Chargers. We all know that Mike Vrabel wants to run the ball, and they also brought back offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, who in 2020 and 2021, without Tom Brady on the Patriots, had a double-digit touchdown rusher on the team. In 2020, it was Cam Newton with 12 rushing touchdowns. In 2021, it was Damian Harris with 15 rushing touchdowns, and not to mention that Josh Jacobs had 12 rushing touchdowns under McDaniels in 2022. Let's also not forget that one of Henderson's biggest strengths is the receiving game, where it's being reported all training camp that he's just torching defenders out of the backfield on wheel routes on top of taking handoffs to the house. And we can't talk about pass-catching running backs under Josh McDaniels without bringing up James White's effectiveness in the receiving game, having multiple 60-plus reception seasons, including one year with 87 receptions for 750 yards and 8 touchdowns as the RB7 in fantasy football. Let's also not forget that with the Vegas Raiders, Josh Jacobs had 57 receptions in 2022, and Raiders running backs as a whole totaled over 100 targets as a group in 2022 and in 2023, both years under Josh McDaniels. Ramondre Stevenson has been an ineffective workhorse for 2 years in a row now. He's not gotten over 4 yards per carry. He's only scored 12 times over the last 2 years combined, yet he still received a heavy workload and a healthy receiving workload as well. So if Henderson starts to take over as the main RB1 for the Patriots in an improved offense, with an improved offensive line, with year 2 of Drake May, with better weapons around him, TreVeyon Henderson could have a league-winning type of rookie season that we see pretty much every single year. As a late 5th round pick going around other running backs like DeAndre Swift and Joe Mixon and David Montgomery, as well as fellow rookies in RJ Harvey and Caleb Johnson, Henderson is an easy smash draft there for week 1 opportunity, followed by a second half explosion as he gets more involved in this Patriots offense. Now, the next 2 names are double-digit round backup running backs who aren't really getting the attention that other backups are, like Isaac Arendo or Trey Benson or even really Tyler Algier, but if the starter ahead of them does go down, their production could be immense as their team's RB1s, a la this year's versions of Jordan Mason. The first running back is Braylon Allen, the RB2 for the New York Jets, who is getting buzz in training camp for possibly getting the David Montgomery role in this new Jets offense from coaches coming from the Detroit Lions system, which that in and of itself is a worthwhile shot to make in the 14th round of drafts. But it's the upside in case Breece Hall were to get hurt, which, to be fair, he has only missed 2 games over the last 2 years. But if it were to happen, Braylon Allen as the full-time RB1 for the New York Jets would be absolutely amazing. This is a kid who is still only 21 years old, entering his second season in the NFL, was hyper-productive in college at Wisconsin, is an absolute wrecking ball in size at 6'1", 235 pounds, started off last year very hot and was an extremely popular waiver wire pickup, and even though he doesn't really look like it, he is a solid receiver out of the backfield. He actually had 19 catches last year behind Breece Hall and averaged almost 8 yards per reception. And in the one game that Breece did miss last year, Allen had 4 receptions for 38 yards, put up 12 PPR fantasy points without scoring a touchdown. That is a fair fill-in for fantasy football, but if this offense is any better under a new coaching staff and Breece Hall does miss extended time, Braylon Allen is a top 24 guy weekly with the upside to be a top 12 guy as the main Jets running back. So do not ignore him late in your fantasy drafts. The other backup running back, actually going pretty much undrafted in the 16th round, is Eagles backup running back Will Shipley, who is just a very, very good player. In the Dynasty streets this offseason, I was curious about the addition of A.J. Dillon to the Eagles backfield because I wondered if he would be the guy to get the 2-down work if Saquon got hurt, but nah, this is Will Shipley's job to lose all the way. Training camp and the first preseason game all but confirmed that. He looked solid in limited time last year, including a massive run in the playoffs against Washington that he then scored to finish the drive like 2 plays later. He's got good size, has the college pedigree, can catch the ball very well, and that Eagles offensive line can make anyone look pretty good back there, but it certainly helps when that running back has juice of his own. We've all had this talk all offseason about the curse of the 370 touches, the Madden curse for Saquon Barkley, on top of his injury history from his time in New York, that if, knocking on wood here, if anything were to happen, Philadelphia's backfield and our fantasy lineups would be in good hands with their backup running back, Will Shipley. Now, the last running back that I am absolutely in love with drafting this year is Bengals running back Chase Brown, but I actually just broke down all the reasons why I love drafting him this year in my last video, which you guys can find right up here.